Next we have Kimberly, and she will talk to you about the library resources that we have.
Another way to save your students money is to have them or encourage them to use library materials, and that's not a new concept, but technology has put a few new twists on it. Specifically, we're going to talk about ebooks. And I could talk about this all day, and I'm not going to. I just want to share a few key points with you, and then if you decide that you want additional information or you want a demo or something like that, let Bang know, and we can do that. Ebooks, why are ebooks in this mix? A couple of reasons. They can't be lost or damaged. They are accessible at any time, so even when the library's closed. They normally provide multiple user access. And just as a little FYI, if any of your students ever complain to you that they can't get into an ebook, please notify me immediately. Occasionally, we end up with a single user purchase by mistake, and if that ever happens, I can always up that and make it unlimited. So please do let us know if that happens. Additionally, ebooks can provide usage data. Now, that doesn't mean that we can tell you who used a book, but we can certainly tell you how many times a book was used during your course, so you can find out if it's something that people are using or not. There are 3 different ways to buy ebooks. One of them is a subscription model. Have any of you ever heard or used eBray? Okay, so eBray is a collection of academic books. It's actually in the CSU electronic core now. The Chancellor's Office pays for all campuses to have this. In a subscription, we have access during the year of our subscription. And at the end of that year, that collection can change. It's usually done by a vendor, an in-between who is contracted with a bunch of publishers, and so publishers can say, oh, I want these titles out, so it can change at any time. Well, not at any time, at the end of the subscription year is when it would change. One thing I want to mention, eBay is very popular, and we do try to make an effort to limit the number of platforms that people have to use. So that is a very stable one because the whole CSU is using it. I want to mention something about eBay real quick. It's used, a lot of people really like it. It does have some stray textbooks in it, and so I do want to explain to you why. First of all, the library doesn't buy textbooks. Copyright is one reason. Here's another one. San Francisco State a few years ago did a study, and it's only fair, if you are going to buy textbooks for one course, you only fair should buy it for everybody's course, right? So San Francisco State did a study, and this was several years ago, I'd say at least 5, and at that time they determined it would cost them more than $500,000 per semester to buy all the textbooks for their campus. So if the library were doing that, we would not have any money for journals, for databases, for anything else. So it's a little confusing that eBay happens to have some textbooks in it, so I just want to tell you up front why that is. Textbook companies will negotiate with a business like eBay. They get a certain percentage, they get some sort of money. They do not negotiate with libraries. So if those textbooks are in there and you like them, by all means you can use them, but we can't add textbooks to that collection. And so I know it's a little bit confusing because people say, well, I saw a textbook in there. Sorry, it wasn't us. Another way that we can buy ebooks is through an outright purchase. And that could be by an individual title or a collection. So if you had a book that you wanted the library to purchase, as long as it wasn't a textbook, you certainly could buy that. Not every book is available as an ebook, but we can find out for you in a really quick manner. And if we can buy it, we will. Have you used JSTOR? Okay, so JSTOR now has some ebooks, and they're selling them by collection, by subject collection. So the nice thing about that is your students aren't going to learn a new platform. It's just going to be turned on if we buy any of these collections, they would just be turned on in JSTOR, and if they came up in a subject search, the ebooks would also come up. If anyone's interested in looking at some of the JSTOR stuff with me, I'd be more than happy to go over that, or if you want me to show everybody at once, I'd be happy to do something like that at another meeting. The final way that we can buy ebooks, is called PDA, and that means patron-driven acquisitions. And what we mean by that is we may select records of books that we think people would like to use. The records go into our catalog, and then there are triggers as to how much if someone interacts with that record, whether we'll purchase it or not. So actually, they sit in our catalog and they're not costing us anything unless somebody uses them, and that will trigger a purchase. And it's not just somebody glancing at a title or table of contents. Different companies have different trigger mechanisms, but mostly it involves either printing, reading a whole chapter, a certain amount of time that's spent on it, all kinds of stuff. So that's another option. So if you thought about, for example, something that you would like the students to use but you weren't sure they would, possibly we could go the PDA route and put the records in and then see if anybody uses them. So that way it's kind of a free trial.
Once you, like if one person uses it, then do you have to pay the full purchase price, or do you pay per people who use it?
They have, it depends on the company, and there are several options. So they actually have rent also. And so we could do something like that possibly. The trigger mechanisms are pretty fair, so it's not just a person, unless somebody's printing out stuff. I think a lot of, if you print out a chapter, they pretty much want you to buy the book. But it's a fair thing, so you're not, if somebody's really using that book, of course we want to purchase it. So. The rental thing is one option. There's another rent-to-own option. The industry is not really stable at this point, so people are trying lots of different things. We currently have, I'm sure that all of you in some of your classes use EBSCO, the EBSCO either Academic Complete or one of the other subject databases. We're in a trial right now with EBSCO because they now have an ebook collection. And so if you're searching in there, when you're in the trial, you don't see everything. So I don't want you to have the idea that what you're seeing in EBSCO is their complete collection. It's not. They only let you see a few things. But if you're looking in EBSCO and you're searching, check and see, because you'll see the icon will come up that it's a book if you want to get an idea of how that looks in EBSCO. We probably will go with that because EBSCO has a really good coverage of university press books. But if there's anything else that you see out there that you're interested, let me know. For example, later on I'd really like to make an appointment with Anna and Christina because eBrary has a separate Spanish language collection that we could, and it would go right into that same interface. EBSCO doesn't separate by language, so if you're searching, you probably will find some things in Spanish already. But eBrary, it's a very separate collection, so we can do that. Also, there's another company that has Spanish language ebooks. So there are lots of options. But that would be something, if we do a special collection like that, I want your participation. I don't want us to just guess, so I would be asking you to take a look at it with me and what's in there and that sort of thing. What else can I tell you about ebooks? Does anybody have questions? Concerns? This avoids having to buy multiple copies. This avoids things being lost or manipulated by one person who checks it out and nobody else can use it, that sort of thing. In the CSU, I believe it's Dominguez Hills, is that right, Bank, that has a really rigorous program, Affordable Learning Solutions program with ebooks. And they actually have a person, a full-time person whose job it is to contact faculty and say, I found all these books, you don't have to ask for any textbooks, let me show you what we found. We're not going that aggressive, but we do want to certainly help you. Any librarian can help you look for ebooks if you'd like to incorporate those into your syllabus. I'm trying to think if there are any drawbacks. Melissa, in the history, I think that some people don't like ebooks. Are your
It's true because and some of my students also say this, that to deal with an entire book, if you're really reading and taking notes on the entire book, it's still, I mean, history books are kind of tedious. There are all these examples. You're usually wanting to take notes. So a lot of people actually prefer, some students and several faculty, but we're getting used to it. But yes, I mean, I think some were, I don't know if this is the same in other fields, but I think in history, some books are very, if you're gonna look at the screen for 2 hours for a single chapter and be taking notes on it, it gets a little tedious.
One thing I wanted to mention is one of my colleagues put together a LibGuide, which Vang has marked in the Blackboard. It's on how, here it is right here. It's how to use eBury mostly because that's the biggest collection we have at this point, but students can actually highlight, they can download pieces, they can save parts, they can go back to where they were. There are a number of options in here for students if they're using an ebook. He's put together, I think he lists some directions for the smaller collections. We have a couple of smaller collections as well. eBury's the big one right now. I suspect the next big one would be EBSCO. And probably the JSTOR stuff.
So for these, the ones that they can download, it looks like they can actually annotate and stuff electronically for the
Yes.
ones that they can download, so they
Yes.
can mark it up electronically.
Yes.
Students would like that.
That's true for the most part, but again, individual companies, some do, some don't, but most of them are getting on board with that.
How does it work? So- And this is more a copyright issue, but
Yes.
let's,
I could do a quick, real fast if you want. Just go back and then just type in. And then you see it says ebooks right over here. Just click on the ebooks. And then they give you all the ebooks. Then you just have to go ahead and click on it. The full text. And this is an EBSCO host. So this is an EBSCO book. You can download this book offline, look at the ebooks full text.
This is the one that's a trial, so we haven't actually purchased this one yet.
And then let's go back to this, pick another one. Let's say- This is an eBury. So it gives the table of contents. Once I sign in using my Fresno State email and password, I can go ahead and, from the different pages here,
See the little highlighting icon up there.
as soon as this is done.
And are these available to download for a Kindle?
That again is by publisher, but yes, some of them are. A lot of them are even downloadable to a phone, if you believe it or not.
So if I wanted to highlight this part here, and then I would click on this, but it's telling me that I signed in first. And once I do, then I can type in whatever I want, my notes and everything on there. And then every time I sign in, it recognizes that that's the book I have on my shelf. Those are the notes that I took already. They can always go back to it. So it's as if it's a textbook of its own. So it
Something
makes
to recommend if you have to, because I know there's definitely eye fatigue that goes on, particularly with reading on a backlit screen, and, but it may be worth suggesting to students to go ahead and get like a Kindle Paperwhite. It's a very different reading experience on that, and it's much more akin to reading an actual book, and if they're accustomed to, working with books and they already are accustomed to writing their notes by hand next to it, it's kind of hard to take notes electronically on the Kindle Paperwhite, but it is a lot more conducive to long-term reading, so.
Can I ask a question not about ebooks? So I understand the ebooks and that a lot of books now are becoming available. But what about so there are some books that the library already has that it's purchased, right? So like the Holocaust, selected documents in 18 volumes. So we purchased that, and usually it's an entire class going to use that at the same time. So one semester I put it on reserve so they couldn't take it out of the library, they had to be. But would it be possible, something like that, to scan that and have that available only within our system? Like again, it would be a login, because that wouldn't violate copyright theoretically if it's only available to our students who had purchased it. I mean, can the library, is there any, do you have technology? I understand it's a time and there are other problems with that, but for a few select works that would be requested that are used all the time by multiple students, would it be an option to scan maybe a few chapters of those and have available?
I think that we would start with the publisher.
If, the thing is, call us. You can call the library or call me for other materials and stuff. We don't know until we ask. And lots of times there are things that, we didn't even know that was available, but are. And, give us a chance to look at it and see if it is available. Maybe not that specific format, it could be something else, a different format on it. And then the other thing when you mentioned Kindle, a lot of questions that I get on ebooks is that, this is available from, on my Nook. okay? Keep in mind that Nook is different from Kindle, Kindle is different from another platform, and not everything is available. And if you're asking for something that is proprietary to only Kindle, then you're cutting out all of your students. And we would be able to tell you that as well. Because you might be able to say, I want this ebook, it's only available on Kindle, but that requires your students to have Kindle because of proprietary information. So those are the types of things we can look at when we're looking at ebooks too.
You know, I try to ask students when I get the opportunity about preferences for how they like to look at ebooks. And most of them say they don't want to buy another device, so they're going to use it on their phone, which just totally makes my eyes cross. But I do see a lot of the vendors are now trying to make things accessible in those venues as well. So it's going to be market driven, there's no two ways about it.
And everybody will come online eventually, that there'll be one platform that will hold much, you know. So we're going digital. It's not as fast as people think it's going to happen, but it is going to happen.
Any other questions about ebooks or how this can help your students save money? Okay.